NASA's Voyager One left Earth on Monday the 5th of September 1977. As of time of recording, the unmanned ship is 13,05,582,266 miles from Earth, hurtling through interstellar space. It passed Saturn in 1980 and left our solar system on February the 14th, 1990, and it won't reach another star for 40,000 years. Aboard Voyager One is a 12-inch golden phonograph that contains 115 images of rivers, people, supermarkets, fishing boats, traffic, musical instruments, and books. Recordings of wind, animals, a message from President Jimmy Carter, Azerbaijani bagpipe music, Louis Armstrong, and greetings in 59 different languages. Along with other things like brainwaves and mathematical equations, it has on it a key that explains how to play it. It's the first interstellar encyclopedia, and it was curated by a committee at NASA, chaired by the scientist Carl Sagan. But how did those scientists decide what to put on it? How do you decide what reflects humanity, what's important, and who decides who decides? It's an important question, how we order things, how we present things, that goes back thousands of years. The Roman Pliny the Elder was probably the first encyclopedist. His work, the Naturalis Historia, is a 37-volume tome that included 10 sections from mathematics to zoology that Pliny began in 77 AD, 2 years before he was killed by the eruption of Mount Vesuvius. It includes descriptions of the anatomy of the elephant and the hippo, the importance of the queen bee, descriptions of 900 drugs and the plants they're made from, and cites the moon's correct distance from the Earth, 230,000 miles. It's an incredible scope of knowledge for one man, but it also contains an entry on a description of the Cynocephalus, the mythical dog-headed man, and the Estomi people, who had no need for eating or drinking and survived on the smell of apples and flowers. Pliny was read to while he ate dinner, took his baths, sunbathed. He even thought walking a waste of time when he could be carried around Rome in a chair while he read. It wasn't until 1,000 years later when the first alphabetized encyclopedia was written, the Pseudus, and became the method of organization for the great encyclopedias of the Enlightenment. But between Pliny and the Enlightenment, the history of the encyclopedia is as slumberful as the aptly named times, the Dark Ages. There was only one book that you needed to read to know the order of the world, the Bible. The man who changed all this was Denis Diderot. Before Diderot in the 17th and 18th centuries, encyclopedias once again started to become popular, but almost all of them were written in the context of religious orthodoxy. The event that changed the encyclopedia was the same event that changed the Western world, the Reformation. The encyclopedia's rise in popularity coincided with the rise of capitalism. As merchants travelled the world, information about the places they visited became increasingly valuable. In the 16th century, a Franciscan friar authored a 12-volume encyclopedia of the New Spain, a wide-reaching catalogue of information about the New World. Back in France, though, it was Louis Maurier's Grand Dictionnaire Historique that became the catalyst for change. Maurier himself was a Roman Catholic, but after a revised and enlarged edition was released in 1689, Jean Leclerc, a Calvinist, became the first to criticise the idea of an entire encyclopedia being written by one man, one viewpoint, one religion, and suggested a board of editors, each with expertise in different areas. After Maurier's death, Leclerc was asked to work on consequent editions of the Dictionnaire, and 700 new articles were added in an attempt to balance the publication's Catholic bias. And so questions of bias and power suddenly became central in the debate about the presentation of information. But it was Denis Diderot who first produced a modern, secular encyclopedia. A great figure of the French Enlightenment, Diderot wrote about the defence of religious minorities and wrote critically and openly about religion. Diderot secured a wide-ranging body of contributors and between 1751 and 1772 produced a book of 72,000 entries, the Encyclopédia. The French government and church leaders rallied against the controversial project, but Diderot had some support from high places, including ministers and Louis XVI's mistress. The government officially banned the project, but it continued surreptitiously, with the government willfully ignoring Diderot, hoping not to cause too much of a stir, while simultaneously hoping that the official ban would placate the church. It was a miscalculation on the part of the government. The Encyclopédia was a mouthpiece for Enlightenment political ideas, radical political ideas, and is seen as a huge contributing factor of the French Revolution. So the history of the Encyclopedia is a perfect example of why the Dark Ages are called the Dark Ages and the Enlightenment is called the Enlightenment. After Diderot, the floodgates opened. The first Encyclopedia Britannica was written between 1768 and 1771. Its goal was simple: broad appeal. The first edition of the Encyclopedia Britannica had a 39-page entry on the subject of curing disease in horses. It's a reminder that encyclopedias aren't really about what we know. They're about what we want to know, what we need to know. They're historically and culturally contextual. The 2010 edition of the Britannica was written by 100 full-time editors and 4,000 contributors. That included 110 Nobel Prize winners and 5 American presidents. It had 32 volumes and 32,640 pages. It was the oldest continuous running English language encyclopedia in production. And then it stopped. 2010 was the last edition. Why? This. Compared to Britannica's 4,000 contributors, Wikipedia potentially has 7 billion. There are over 17 million articles in 262 languages, 3.5 million articles in English, with over 1 billion different edits to the articles. I think it's probably one of the defining achievements of mankind, and a monolithic harbinger of the shift from the industrial age to the information age. But do the old questions of the Enlightenment encyclopedias still apply, like Maurier's Catholic bias? Does Wikipedia have a bias of its own? Remember the saying, history is written by the victors? You can see this play out in the history of encyclopedias. It was the religious world that collated information until the Enlightenment overturned the religious order. And who decided what went on NASA's Voyager One? The scientists. So who are the victors online? Wikipedia requires its editors to maintain a neutral point of view. But who's more objective? A single well-qualified editor of an entry, or thousands of, usually not as qualified people around the world? In a study on the subject, Feng Zhu and Shane Greenstein set out to answer that very question. They took 500 words and phrases most attributed statistically to Democrats, like tax break and fuel efficiency, and also Republicans, like border security and war on terror, and ran the database through 4,000 political Wikipedia articles to see how many of these phrases were included. Not only did they find that Wikipedia used partisan language in 73% of those articles, compared to Britannica's 34%, but that almost all of the phrases were taken from the left-leaning register. Does this mean that the internet or the people more likely to edit Wikipedia articles are more left-leaning? Or that this outcome is simply a reflection of reality? Of course, the demographic of the internet is disproportionately young, but this levels out as years pass. And not only that, Zhu and Greenstein found that the more times an article is revised on Wikipedia, the less bias it displays, which bodes well for Wikipedia's neutrality over time. So I think the lesson to learn from the history of the encyclopedia is simply this: who wrote this and why? If you like these videos and would like to support me making more, you can follow me on Twitter, Instagram and Facebook by clicking the links in the description below. You can like this video and subscribe to the Then and Now channel to see more. And if you're feeling really generous, you can pledge as little as $1 towards the creation of each new video. You can click here to find out more. Thank you.